Okay, good morning. It is 9:34. I call this February 28th, 2026 special meeting of the Cupertino City Council to order. Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fruin.
Here.
Councilmember Mohan.
Here.
Councilmember Wong.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here. So we begin with item 1, the council workshop. We'll start with public comments, limiting to 1 minute so that we can get into our city council governance and strategic planning workshop. Please limit your comments to city council governance and strategic planning workshop. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments on the item?
Yes, Mayor, I have one request to speak from in this room from Kathy Hoverson. Kathy, as the mayor's stated, you have 1 minute.
I just came to the meeting to remind everybody that Santa Clara County is working on an EIR for the Lehigh Permanente Creek, Lehigh Permanente. And it's been about
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Public comment today is limited to the items on the agenda.
oh, that's not what public. I thought I was gonna wait and see what's on the agenda. I had no idea what you had on the agenda, my dear.
I think it was public.
No, it was not, because I looked. So I'm supposed to read it now while I'm trying to
City
do the
council governance and strategic planning.
No, but that doesn't tell me anything. That's just, you're gonna find out after you get through doing this.
I'm sorry. Your public comments should be limited to the council governance.
But that comes after. After you guys give your spiel, then I get to comment on that too.
No,
How does
no,
this work? Does it change everything?
no, it's a special meeting other than a regular meeting. A regular meeting has a different setup for public comment.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I would like somebody to say it's okay for me to talk about. I'm not going into a long, whatever. Just letting you guys know that they're still writing up the EIR. It's been about a year. It should take another year. That's all I wanted to say. I mean, I don't think that's a big deal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. That is the only request to speak for this item.
All right, thank you. So, Madam City Manager, will you please proceed with the presentation on this item? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. And before we begin, I would just like to say thank you to all of you for being here on this beautiful Saturday. I know it's nice outside and you're stuck in the house for a couple hours, but I really appreciate you all being here. We've been here for a while. And we'll be out of here at with that, I will send it over to Ken Chevy to lead the first item on the agenda today.
Thank you, Tina. And again, good morning and welcome everybody. I do want to also thank you for your time, and each of you gave your time to talk to me individually before this session, so I want to thank you also for that. I have the first about hour and a half of the session. Drew will be covering the strategic planning portion for the last hour of the session. This is really an opportunity to talk informally, and I hope you feel relaxed. To pretend it's raining and miserable outside. I'm sure the weather will get much better by this afternoon, then you can go out and enjoy it. I want you to, have this as an informal conversation. The whole purpose for this session is for you to be able to step back and talk about working relationships in an informal way. It's very hard to talk about working relationships or to people get areas of potential improvement and formal council meetings. You're getting, agenda items. You're sometimes talking about some tough topics. It's not really an opportunity to really talk about how you work together, how you work with the staff. This is an opportunity informally to do that. So again, your participation will be critical to this. I will share some information with you early on, but then your engagement with the topic and your willing to share your ideas and thoughts will be very helpful. So some of you have seen this picture before and have heard the story a little bit before. I don't think Councilman White has necessarily, but basically, I'll explain it in a moment, but just again, for those who haven't heard my background, I spent 40 years in local government in this county, 27 years as a city manager, 6 in Campbell, 21 in Mountain View. And then I've been doing work for ICMA. I did that for 8 years, the International City County Management Association. Now I'm a volunteer for ICMA for basically mentoring city managers of Santa Clara and San Mateo County. Every once in a while, I'm asked to do some training, do some workshops, that sort of thing. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about that. Just a little personal history in regard to Cupertino. I'm going to make myself feel really old because I guess I am really old. But I've known every one of your city managers since Bob Quinlan. And Bob Quinlan was quite a character. Good manager, but quite a funny guy. At that time, I worked before I became city manager of Campbell, I worked for the city manager of Campbell. Bob Quinlan would prank call him during the middle of the workday, pretending to be an irate citizen. So I was kind of down there myself. So you've named your community center after someone interesting. I've obviously seen a number of waves of Cupertino council members over the years. And I even remember the Valco controversy, not the Valco controversy, also controversy in the 70s, where the community was rather divided over, where should a regional development center go? So lots of history, and again, Cupertino has had a long history of success, and I know you want to try to continue to improve and continue to build. So that's really what this is about. That picture there, yes, that is, basically up at the top of Yosemite Falls in Yosemite Valley. And as a former city manager, you do have to be a risk taker. But as I like to point out to people, I'm not absolutely crazy. And that particular photo, well, it's not AI driven or Photoshop. Camera angles can be misleading. I'm actually about 20 feet in from the actual rim of the valley, and my feet are 5 feet off the ground at that point. And again, if it was more than 5 feet, I would not be sitting there again. All right, so what are we going to do today? And I don't know if we can get any of that kind of extra stuff off there. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We're just going to kind of refresh some key concepts about, effective governments, working relationships, and particularly council, city manager, staff working relationships. And then we're going to consider how these concepts, can potentially be strengthened in Cupertino. So that's basically the plan. Oh, by the way, I hate monologues, so please interrupt, raise your hand, you're not interrupting. If you have any questions, comments, observations, just stop me. Yes, ma'am.
Can we talk about the commissioner-staff relationship?
Sure. I mean, you have a session that's wide open, so, I think anything that affects your working relationship and with your key audiences is fine. And I could certainly put Commissioner there as well, so. All right, have you ever wondered why being a council member isn't easy? Or do you agree that there's some challenges associated with this from time to time? Okay, well, why it isn't easy? Thank you. Well, you deal with challenging issues, some things maybe they're not all challenging, but there are plenty of challenging issues. Do you have varied opinions and perspectives?
No.
Does your community have varied opinions and perspectives?
No.
All right, well, then it's easier here than most places. Group decision making. If you were the only one who had to make the decision, that would be easier than having to make it with a group, right? How about even with your families deciding where to go to dinner and where to go on vacation? Group decision making can be difficult. There's a lot of that goes into that, a lot of compromise. Oh, by the way, you may or may not have, some said people run kind of together and that sort of thing, whatever. But at the end of the day, who decides who your group is? Voters. Yeah, you don't decide who your group is. You're thrown together, and you're supposed to be an effective team, even though you didn't choose each other as teammates. Oh, by the way, you do in public, and pretty much anyone can participate in it, within certain guidelines. So, it's not like you can, like a private club, you can just kind of have your little board meeting and, nobody else is there, kind of thing. Media and public scrutiny. You ever get any scrutiny? Social media scrutiny, yeah. When you get social media, you don't have next door deal, do you? All right. And of course, have you ever heard that you don't have unlimited resources, either financial or staffing or even your own time? Yeah, never enough resources. And of course, you're paid so much and you have so many perks and benefits People expect you to put in unlimited hours because, that's what it's all about. Well, again, I don't think people understand how many hours you actually end up putting in. They may think that, even though sometimes your meetings may be long, but that is the extent, your council meeting, that's the extent of your commitment, it certainly isn't. There's sometimes a lack of knowledge regarding what your role is and whether you can snap your fingers and make things happen on certain topics and whatever. And this could be debated, but some people may feel that, especially since the pandemic, or maybe in the current national political atmosphere, there's less patience and understanding, in regard to why something isn't done or why you don't do what they want to have done. So it isn't easy being a council member. However, you can, as a group, the way you work together, the way you work with your staff, the way you work with your commissions, can make it easier or harder, even with all those factors. And I've seen some councils make it a lot harder than it needs to be. And we'll talk about some reasons why that may be the case. So I'm not gonna spend much time on this, but you all got all kinds of teams you're members of, and commissions is listed there as well in this case. How effectively you all work together will, in my view, determine the success of the organization and your community. If you're able to work effectively as a team, doesn't mean you always agree. We'll talk a lot about that. But if you can work effectively as a team, and it's not just going to be the city organization, the city council itself, but your community. In my view, your community. Oh, by the way, these are my opinions. That's all they are. So you may have different opinions. Again, same sort of thing. Why I think teamwork is critical. I'm not going to actually go through these. But one thing I will mention is your ability to attract and retain quality staff to work for you will be reflected a lot by how they view the culture of the organization, including how the council treats the staff, how the council treats each other, how the council treats the community. I think you'd be surprised how much of a microscope potential staff people, look at that. Can you get staff people? You can get staff people. Can you get really good staff people? Only if you create a good environment for that and you play an important role with that. And your community members, you need members of the community to step up and be on your commissions, your committees, to potentially, I'm not suggesting you recruit them to run against you, but eventually you'll want to have successors to you on the city council. And a lot of people will not choose to participate if they don't think it's a positive environment. They'll go volunteer there's time and effort in areas where they think is more positive, or maybe they're more likely to have a positive impact. So all these things, are, I think, reasons why it's really important to have the best possible relationship as you can. One concept I hope you agree with, but I encourage you to kind of consider, is you will succeed or fail as a group. Now, again, you may be able to get some bragging points, some here and there on some specific issues or whatever. But overall, you will either be successful as a group working together or you won't be. And I think, I run into some council members over my career, and I've directly worked for almost 40 different council members as a city manager, all kinds of personalities, all kinds of philosophies, all kinds of approaches. And every once in a while, I've run into one who think that if they could distinguish themselves from their colleagues in some way, or maybe make their colleagues look bad, that would be a plus for them.
Mhm.
It would end up being a minus for them, actually, because they'd end up not getting much done because their colleagues wouldn't be terribly supportive of them. And sometimes if they did make the group look bad, like the public was not impressed. The public was not feeling that, even though, again, someone may feel they were making someone else look less superior than them, that the overall effect is not a positive one. So team conflict. What do you think about team conflict? Good or bad?
Opportunity for growth.
Opportunity for growth. Anything else?
Not much fun.
Not much fun? Yeah, a lot of it depends on the nature of the conflict, right? Yep. Ray looks like he's anxious to say something.
Look, conflict allows you to work through issues. Depends how you approach it. And so, I mean, I don't think conflict is good or bad. I think it's just depending what you're trying to, what kind of outcome you're trying to get to.
Or maybe the way it's demonstrated.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I agree. It's opportunity for growth because a lot of times it's an issue that might have been brewing underneath we didn't know, and that they're misunderstanding it. But when it becomes a conflict, we have an opportunity to talk, communicate, talk it out, find out how our understanding might differ and why.
Can it be positive? I think you just kind of answered that, at least some of you feel it can be. I think a lot depends on definition of conflict, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And there can be different ideas and viewpoints regarding conflict. So here's the thing. Conflict can either be negative and counterproductive, or it can be an incredibly important ingredient to a group in reaching decision. So, if conflict, as I'll say in a minute, if conflict ends up being personal, and that ends up being personal disputes, then not much positive is going to come from it. If conflict is a legitimate airing and discussion or even debate of ideas because there are legitimate different perspectives about an issue, then I think that can be positive. Because, first of all, does everybody in Cupertino, I think we talked about this a minute ago, have the same idea, same views on everything? Yeah. And how many people in Cupertino have been selected to be the arbiter for all those, how many, 70,000?
60.
Okay. All those thousands of people, how many people have been chosen to be the arbiter on difficult issues to figure it out and direct, for all of those people? Yeah, the 5 of you. So if you all always agreed on everything, could that end up being counterproductive? Because obviously you might not be discussing all the potential views that are represented in the community, potentially. And you could even get into a groupthink kind of situation. And one of the problems with groupthink is sometimes you can overlook something important because you don't maybe challenge ideas. But there's a big difference between challenging ideas and challenging people. In particular, there have been a lot of organizations have suffered some great failures by people being conflict adverse, even maybe around ethical issues, but they don't challenge some misbehavior, some misconduct. They haven't been willing to address something. I mean, the kind of the space shuttle tragedy a number of years ago, where people didn't feel free to point out that there were some issues that needed to be addressed. And again, it was not viewed as appropriate. So if the conflict is personal and is gets to be of a personal nature, then probably not so much. If the conflict is legitimately of that difference of opinion about ideas, then not necessarily a bad thing. But again, it's a personal kind of counterproductive. What are some sources of team challenges? I mean, you're all different. I'm not going to go through this list. You all bring something different to the table, including different philosophies and different views of issues, and different styles of communicating, different personalities, whatever. I'll talk about election hangover in a minute. Probably the biggest challenge is when there's a lack of trust. And that's easy to develop and it's hard to get rid of. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe what you can do about that, because that gets really difficult. But you'll be sitting at the council dais and you'll be hearing all kinds of different views from your council colleagues. Those might well be very legitimate. They may be quite different than what you think is an appropriate view of a particular issue, but it's who they are. Hopefully, genuinely who they are, who they feel they're representing, or again, some sort of legitimate perspective that may not be represented in conversation up to this point. So again, what I would encourage you to do is that, is hopefully people will bring legitimate differences of viewpoint to a conversation. Be willing to accept that without necessarily judging the person, assuming they're approaching the issue in a positive, productive way. I once had one of those almost 40 council members I had in Mountain View got elected He's a smart guy, had lots of ideas. Um, but he felt he was probably the smartest person in the room. And if anybody didn't agree with him on an issue, the other council members were either not very smart or dishonest. It had to be one of those two things because that he could not in any way envision anybody legitimately disagreeing with him and being intelligent and honest because there was only one way of viewing that issue. So made that kind of obvious to his fellow council members, by the way he responded when they would have a different perspective. So how often do you think he was successful in actually accomplishing anything? And what I mean by that is being able to get, in that case, 7 council members, get 3 other council members, even 3 to agree with him on much. Not really. Not really. And now, maybe there were some instances where maybe he should have gotten more support, just based on the nature of the issue. But especially if there was a close call, he never got the benefit of the doubt because the other council members did not feel respected, and maybe they didn't fully trust him. So he didn't accomplish a lot, and then he didn't run for a second term, which was unusual in Mountain View because he just wasn't very successful. So he wasn't able to understand that people could legitimately have differences of opinion. Sometimes people have a difference of opinion for reasons you respect. Maybe there'll be times they'll have a difference of opinion, reasons you don't respect. But maybe start out by assuming it could be legitimate. And again, as far as the key point of all this, how do you deal with differences of opinion, and how do you avoid it becoming personal? So, a couple of things in summary: it's okay to disagree, or recognize differences is okay, often desirable. Can be negative, but try to assume it's for appropriate reasons. How about not appreciating the difference between campaigning and governance? Some councils seem to always be propping up the last campaign or getting ready for the next campaign. And in my view, again, everything you're going to hear from me is just my opinion, that is really counterproductive. Because campaigning is all about differentiating yourself on issues, differentiating yourself from the other candidates or potentially your current colleagues. Basically, you can run in a coalition, I get that, but basically in a campaign, you're kind of like a sole decision maker. Maybe you're running against City Hall, or maybe you're running against some of your colleagues, whatever, but it's a whole different kind of activity than trying to govern as a group and trying to find common ground. And if some people have trouble switching, particularly, and not talking about Councilmember Wang in this case, but oftentimes first-time council members, they're campaigning for so long, they come on the council, they don't know how to switch gears to say, okay, for me to I'm in campaign mode to be successfully to get elected, I got to switch to governance mode in order to be successful in a governance, in order to accomplish anything. There's only one reason to get elected, and that is to govern. But if you forfeit your ability to effectively govern because you're always campaigning, again, can't get over the last campaign or getting ready for the next campaign, it's going to be really hard for you to develop a relationship with your colleagues where you can really accomplish something from a governance perspective, where you're really able to develop coalitions and have good conversations and that sort of thing. So that's one of the least controversial things I'll say today. And anybody got any thoughts on that one? Okay. Doesn't mean you're shut out from that. Kind of said that already, so I'm not going to say it again. So in my view, what is your superpower? In my view, your superpower is your ability to persuade. I mean, that's what you do on the council. That's what you do as a group, is your ability to persuade each other. You don't want to squander that because that's how you get things done. But sometimes when councils let things get personal, when they can't get over the previous issue, and it gets in the way of them being able to persuade on the next issue or the next issue or the next issue, then they kind of lose that superpower. And again, you've got to, you got to have a majority of you to agree on anything of any substance. And you've got to be able to persuade your colleagues. So the way you conduct yourself, the way you work with your colleagues is really going to determine your ability to be persuasive. And in my view, the two key areas in regard to your ability to persuade, you have to be trusted and you have to be respected. Now, none of us are perfect in any of those, in those two areas. They're difficult. But what can you do to establish trust? And what can you do to establish respect? And that respect can be just who you are as a person. It could be your technical knowledge in a particular area. It could be a lot of different. But I think those are key to your ability to persuade. Let me digress a little bit on the trust issue because it's so important to a successful relationship, but the loss or lack of trust, excuse me, can be so detrimental to any relationship. So what I encourage you to do is try to always start, whether it's you're dealing with commissioners, council, staff members, the public, yourself, start from a position of assuming the person is trustworthy. And try to conduct yourself in a way trustworthy. Now, if that trust begins to be lost, if you think it's being lost by something you've done or said, or something someone else done has said, see if you can deal with that. Because if there is a lack of trust and it's not addressed, it's not dealt with, then it's probably just going to get worse and it's going to deteriorate. I'm not going to be Pollyannish and tell you that everybody you deal with is always going to have good intent and is going to be honest and straightforward. I've been around a little bit too long to say everybody you're going to run into is going to be that way. But you might want to be open to that possibility, even if they're very different personalities and different, philosophical positions. You may want to be open to that. And then you want to also listen carefully and thoughtfully to what they're saying. And again, particularly if it's a critical relationship, such as among yourselves on the council, if you begin to lose trust, it's difficult to, maybe you call it a challenging conversation or whatever, but as difficult as it may be, see if there's something you can do to explain to the other person why you're beginning to feel a certain way, and see if they're open to sharing with you ways to maybe not allow that trust to be lost any further, or maybe how to regain it. But if it's ignored, it probably will just get worse. I'm getting tired of hearing myself. Any thoughts on that one?
Do you have a suggestion for how to confront that given the strictures of the Brown Act?
Yeah, your attorney's here, right? I think the Brown Act is often used as an excuse not to have meaningful dialogue between council members or elected officials. Yeah, can the majority of you get together either at one time or serially to talk about an item that's going to come before you, subject matter for a decision? Is that pretty close? Yeah. Now, no, you can't do that. But can you talk to a colleague about, what they said to you at a meeting, or how they, conducted themselves, or even talk to a couple of your colleagues about that sort of thing without, start sharing what one person said to another person to another person about an item that's coming up for a decision before you. But don't allow the Brown Act to be an excuse not to have those kind of conversations that are sometimes needed to have in order to clear the air. And again, this may be a person you wouldn't socialize. You weren't selected to be friends. You weren't elected to be friends, right? Did your platform says, this is my friends group, vote for me so we can have fun on the city council? No, you don't have to be friends. You don't have to, it'd be nice if you liked each other, but you don't even, you don't have to be people you would socialize with. But you can have a working relationship with them, and you can have respectful conversations with them. And if it's, not heading in that direction, it's getting to deteriorate, I encourage you to have that conversation. And if you have a question about the Brown Act, talk to your attorney, but I don't think the Brown Act is really too relevant as long as you just stick to that topic. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel in the past few years, the trust was lost when, through the process of adopting so-called code of ethics, because that is, for some people, they have tried to adopt that with the intent so that they can criticize other people. And then later on, when some people have used that, or just to become a tool you can use to criticize. And then when a person in a team start to do that, and that trust will be lost. And then, so if it's the other party that's doing that thing, then how do you, as a party that might be criticized, to work that out?
Yeah, I think, whether you call it code of conduct or, value statement of the city council or whatever, I think those are generally good things. Now, you have to develop them in a framework where, again, people are trusting that they're not being developed for punitive reasons, but really for reasons to guide appropriate conduct among yourselves or in interactions with the staff that are appropriate. And, but sometimes if they're developed without, when there is a lot of trust, people will assume maybe they're being done in a punitive way or whatever. And those code of conducts are not, I mean, the primary reason not to be able to take action against someone is to establish a level of conduct where action isn't required to be taken. That people,
But some member of the community, initially we adopted one that's more general, so it's more of guideline. And then some member are pushed for a version that's very detailed. And then that's not enough. Some member pushed for a version that has punitive measures. And they want to be sure that there will be punitive measures in case something wasn't followed.
Yeah.
That I kind of feel that seems works against that work things out. If someone maybe unknowingly or accidentally taking a step, uh, let's talk about it out. But then when you have a punitive measure, it will, a lot of times it will be in a public place. People wouldn't have started that, has created some really negative.
Again, it can degenerate into kind of a personal sort of thing. But should you have standards of how you treat each other, how your commissioners treat each other, how your commissioners treat the public, how you treat the public, how you treat your staff, how the staff treats the public, all those sorts of expectations, some of them written down, some of them just built into your culture. Sure, those are important. Can there be some ramifications for violating those? I guess, but there aren't a lot of good techniques for disciplining yourself, your colleagues. You don't have a lot of authority there. You can nibble around the edges a little bit, but you don't. It's really about, if nothing else, peer pressure to conduct yourselves at a certain level, to a certain standard, a certain expectations, and those code of conducts can kind of communicate those expectations. But when it gets beyond the ability to set a standard and everybody understand why it's important to try to follow that standard, when you get too much into disciplining around that, you've kind of lost a lot of the momentum behind it. But I do, so I'm not going to get into the specifics of any particular circumstance you've had because I don't know enough to intelligently talk about it. But I do think you should have expectations for everybody about how everybody's treated. Councilmember?
I think you lack the context, and I think the context is a civil grand jury process was used to silence individuals that were trying to express themselves. And that process and policy created a set of policies that continue to create distrust, because we can't have the conversations that we need to have because everyone's running in fear of actually violating some of those policies. That's where you are here at this moment, right? And so we can't have that free-flowing conversation, nor do we have that trust, because a process put in place to silence people. And that's really what the direct conversation is. That's what Mayor Chow is saying. So we got stuck in this position, therefore we can't have that conversation to even have that conversation. So therefore we don't have the conversation. It's not that we don't trust each other. We've just been put in a place where it's very hard to, because we can't even have the dialogue. And so people use things like the Brown Act or the procedures from something from some other meeting. And that's really what it is. So, and there's been a lot of punitive measures as different factions try to apply that, punish each other or put other people in place for values they don't believe in. And that's the conflict that's in play here. So any conversation here has to address that issue if you really want to get past the trust issue.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you're going to direct this meeting, but if it's going to be 32 slides of trust and where we go, you're not going to get to the result that you want to get to.
Because that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room. So we can either have the conversation here, or we can go through and waste 3 hours on a deck that is very informative, that tells you exactly what to do, or theoretically how we're going to go, or we can actually have a workshop. So, I mean, I don't know what we want to do in this room, but if it's up to you, if you want to have, if you want to get past this as a team, then let's go and attack the issue. If we don't, we can just continue to go through these slides.
Is that what this workshop's all about?
I think we are,
Silence.
Sorry.
I don't know.
All right, we're gonna get to a point in a minute where the council can kind of decide what kind of conversation they have, because it's gonna be about mutual expectations. Okay?
Yep. No, I agree. I'm just
I
saying.
see what he's saying.
Excuse me. You're here to witness and watch. This is really a conversation.
Well, I'm watching, honey, and I'm not happy. Okay, so you can just sit there and
I'm
get on
sorry.
my case.
I'm
I
sorry.
can leave,
I'm the
okay?
chair. No, it doesn't work that way. If you're disrupting the meeting, then
I'm
you are
trying
the,
not to, but you know,
you are disrupting the meeting. You
Try
need to be
not to.
quiet.
I agree
You've
with
been
you.
warned. That's your first warning.
All right, let me go through a few more of my slides, and then we'll talk about.
I think we are at a better place than we were.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Because,
Yeah.
in the past, since 2023, the city administration was put in a place where they are policing council members they work. And then, so it created some friction that was very hard to do. But now we have different city administration in place. And I think we are at a more positive place to that we can move forward now. So.
I agree with
but
that.
I do
I agree with that,
think
so.
that, sometimes some documents may be put in position with good intent from some people. We want to police people, everyone would be good, but then that create distrust.
I mean, I'll digress from my own presentation for a minute. Is it safe to say you agree that there's certain minimal levels of expectation about how you treat each other and how you treat the state and the public
Oh,
that,
yeah, definitely.
that you should establish and hold yourself to?
There is, but the rules were set up in a way to be punitive because we had a different administration that was using that to silence one group of individuals over the other. And that was the challenge. Now we have a better city manager council relationship that we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But the city manager council relationship is what is at the root cause of the problem, because there's no concentration of power at the city council, but the concentration sat at the city manager, and when unchecked, that can become very abusive. And that's what we experienced.
Would you be shocked to have you hear from me that I don't agree with you on that? I respect your view on that.
It's okay.
The council is always ultimately in charge. That doesn't mean the council's in charge of every action that's taken.
Understood.
And there's a good reason, as long as you have the form of government you do, for the council members not to try to direct, individual staff members and, kind of.
I think you don't have the context. We can talk
Yeah,
about
I do. I'm talking generalities, not the context, but, but again, how much we get done today, how much you get done today, if there's unfinished business about some of that that's getting in the way of you moving forward, and hopefully you can have a conversation without, the past creates some context, but if you don't move beyond the past and talk about where you're going, you just talk about past grievances.
I think some emotional scars were inflicted on people. Wounds became scars, and depending on the person, you're able to move past that and try to form a different relationship and see our situation as a new snapshot in time. But it's not easy. And
And some people, the people who inflicted that wounds likely don't even recognize they did that. Their action actually had that impact on the whole city governance and on other people. Maybe they still don't recognize that. And then how do we move forward?
No, I mean, that's the point, moving forward.
We got 6 months to do it. We're about to hit campaign mode in about 6 months.
And I'm very concerned about that, because we will very likely see the campaign mudslinging show up at council, and it makes it much harder to run a trusting meeting among our colleagues here if you have members of the public coming up and taking essentially pot shots at the council members who may be running.
Or who they disagree with. That's
Yeah.
the other issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of in a calm now. I see as the members of the public, it's been much more civil. We do have issues on various projects that are contentious. However, I don't feel like it's getting back to the personal attacks on the council members coming from members of the public. And we would see it where one person would go and take a pot shot, and then few people down the line, the next person is then going to go attack this one and that one. And just watching that is just so unpleasant.
And they're all coordinated campaigns. It's
On
very obvious.
both sides,
Yeah.
it's,
No, on both sides. It's all coordinated campaigns.
yeah. There'll be texting going on. You can watch people feed another person what they're going to say,
Yeah,
even.
and then do you think, looking at your overall community, that is something that they find particularly appealing?
No.
Particularly positive?
No, that makes many people not want to show up at a city council meeting, because who wants to be in a hot kitchen?
Yeah.
Well, actually, we have record attendance over the last couple of years, one would say.
Well, yeah, on issues,
Yeah, on
on issues, but overall, I don't think people like it. And there's a lot of people who are afraid to come up and speak
Yeah.
because of
Absolutely.
that.
And a lot of people just don't get involved. Some people enjoy the drama, right?
Some people do, but
It's
pretty
sad.
sad.
You know,
You see a therapy.
reality television, but you don't want to compete with reality television, you know?
We are not Maury Povich.
So the question is, you can't control everybody in the public as they come before you. You can't control how you conduct yourselves. You can't control whether you campaign at the council or whether you are trying just to do the public business. And you can make it clear if anybody approaches you, whatever, that, you would prefer that the dialogue be about the issues and not about personalities or, if you don't like someone's policy positions, talk about those policy positions.
I'm going to ask a question about that, because I was reading, because we were concerned about the state of the city and the use of the public comment period. And we understand you can place it at the start, you can place it at the finish. There was some concern about how the optics of it. And so that was part of it. But what I was reading said that the individuals need to address the entire body. And I'm not sure if that's accurate. It seems like free speech, they can speak about individuals, even if it's a special meeting, based on, we had a very generic topic, state of the city. So is there a way to enforce that? You must address the body as a whole, or have you looked into that?
It's not a First Amendment violation. You can't do that.
Well, right?
I personally, as a lawyer, I don't think that you can require that the public speaker speak only to the whole body.
That you can't.
First Amendment.
It's a wish, not a.
One A.
I would be surprised.
It's a 1A.
I'd be surprised if you could limit that. So I think that's, with my extensive legal training, but that doesn't mean you can't discourage it. You can't say, we would prefer that you just address the body, not address your comments to individual members. Can you control that? Can you stop them? Probably not. Can you encourage? Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're getting into September, October, and the sparks start flying from the members of the public, there's um, what do you, as the chair, what do you script out there to try to promote civility?
Again, you have to respect their ability to state their opinion. You can ask them to be as courteous and respectful as possible in that context. You can't control it. But you as council members how you react to it can have a big impact on that as well. You set an example. The candidates, there'll be candidates who aren't on the council now, right? So, they're going to set an example as well, but it's got to start somewhere, and it's going to start with the five of you in regard to whether you appear to be encouraging it or you're, seeing, to communicate that, okay, you can say what you want to say, but, we don't think this is the best way to get your point across.
And I could reorder the agenda and throw oral communications towards the end so that we are not starting heavy topics in, feeling attacked and, sort of out of sorts, kind of to protect us.
Why? Why would we do that? I mean, we're supposed to allow free speech.
Yeah,
Free speech.
yeah, but you can move it towards the end so that because if you're under stress, you're not going to think as creatively. If you've been attacked by 10, 15 people at the start, you need to be able to do the work and have your mind settled while you're doing it. Why would I start my evening being attacked and harassed and then be like, oh, well, I'm going to put out a good work product now? It's like,
I don't view it as being attacked or harassed. I view it as people honestly are expressing their opinion and they really want to say something.
some of them are, and some of them are directly attacking.
I know.
And as you get towards the election time, well, we'll consider it. If it gets ugly,
They cannot use the city resource to campaign, right? So if they are making a comment supporting or attacking a candidate, that shouldn't be allowed in a city meeting, right?
no, they can do that.
They can announce a campaign. They can announce their campaign in open
They can
public.
announce their campaign, but
Yeah, they
let
do.
someone else make comments supporting, defending. I thought that's using the city resource and time to campaign. That shouldn't be.
But everyone has access to that resource as a public, so that's not just solely for their purpose. So you should be able to do that. That's a 1A issue.
Oh, no.
So comment is pretty broad what the public can speak about. So I think shutting it down is quite dangerous with respect to the First Amendment. But I will look and see if there's some exception with respect to campaigning activity from the public, but I don't think so. There is requirements that council members do not use public resources for their own campaign. That's different than in the public comment section of the meeting.
I mean, it sounds like, unfortunately, a bit of a culture has developed of letting the issues become personal, debating personalities and people versus issues. And I'm not going to tell you that necessarily it's going to be easy to turn around. But how you model, how you treat each other, what you do or don't do in regard to your campaign supporters and how they conduct themselves. It can be an arms race, Well, if I got 5 people attacking me, I'm going to have 7 people at the next meeting attacking them. And
it's been that way for 10 years.
Pardon?
It's been that way for 10 years, at least.
Yeah. So I'm not saying you wave a magic wand and that goes away, but there's some way to lower the heat on that stuff, so you can focus on governing, and maybe so your overall community, those people who don't show up or choose not to show up, are not infatuated by this continuing conflict. Will have a little more confidence in what's going on.
Yeah, so the comment I wanted to make was we have challenges working as a group of 5 council members, and we have 5 individuals with 5 different positions. But recently, and I've been on, this is my 4th year, the engagement of the public has become a problem. And I don't mean every single person, but some members of the public have an influence on us, which is excessive. And it's really a handful of people who show up at every council meeting, and we pretty much know which position they're going to take. It does, and I think maybe the mayor mentioned it. There is an implied threat in the way some of them speak. If you vote this way, we have an election coming up, so we will make sure that we remember your comments. So things like that, I think, affect our ability to make decisions that are good for the community. And the public cannot say things like you're not working in the interests of the residents. It would be great if all the residents thought alike, and we'd say, oh, of course we are, or we are not. But when we take one position, there's always another position which is completely contrary. And so it's a little ridiculous to say, why did we vote for you and you don't respect the position of the residents, without this person or persons understanding that for every one position that he or she holds, there's another position, maybe equally valid or maybe not, but there is another position. And I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on certain members of the public who spend more time on city issues than others.
We'll decode that statement. I will not name the individual that is being named here, but I will say that it occurs on the other side as well. And there have been those individuals that have outdo influence former mayors, former individuals that have done that as well to other people along the way in the same kind of way. So it's not just that one individual in this example, it is many individuals over the past 10 years that have also had that kind of undue influence, outside lobbying groups that have decided to change the city. We've had all those. Everyone's made the same threats. That's just part of the job.
I don't know. I haven't seen the kind of.
I've been on the other end of that, I'll tell you. That's true.
I mean, no one.
Article, newsletter, people send.
Some fake publications that pop up out of nowhere,
That's different. People do all kinds of things on Nextdoor, as you mentioned, social media and so on. But to come up and say, if you vote for me, if you vote for on this way on this issue, you will face the consequences at the next election.
I've had that same individual do that to me and say all sorts of things which don't fact check.
Yeah.
In support of him, his views.
No, you probably get more than most.
Well, you're mayor, you get more of these now. So.
Yeah, but
I agree with you.
That one particular line though that he delivers is awful, and yeah.
But
I've gotten it. I've heard you guys getting it, and I don't like the tactics, and that gets into kind of the conduct of that person. And there's more than that with regards to.
We got those on the other end before from other people too, right? I mean, it's not just that one individual, and it is a campaign year, and I don't want us to use that as a way to limit that individual's ability to campaign. So I'm just saying that would be just as restrictive.
Yes, there are this kind of person in every city, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna
Yes, of course. Yeah. City government.
What we
You're gonna have some people. You're gonna have some people who like
I'm
conflict.
supposed to take it.
Some people like to stoke conflict.
Yeah.
And they'd love to see, stoke conflict among other people, and let them battle each other. They'd rather do that than go home and watch Netflix or something.
Cheaper.
But who do you actually represent? What are you doing to serve those tens of thousands of people, not the 5 or 10 or 15 who are always kind of barking at you and threatening you? And, oh, by the way, the person that they say, if you don't vote this way on this issue, I'm going to oppose you. How many more issues will there be? They'll say the same thing. And will they ever not oppose you, regardless of what you vote on?
Until they run. But
Yes. So what do you end up doing? You end up voting your conscience, right? I'm being Pollyannish here a little bit. But, if they want to say, I'm going to, hold this against you, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's, I'm going to vote. The people of Cupertino elected me. I'm going to vote the way I think is in the best interest of the people of Cupertino. If that means I lose your vote, your support, so be it. Now, again, I never had run for elective office, so it's easy for me to say. But, I mean, I loved it when I worked for elected officials who could take a lot of punishment. And unfortunately, I didn't like them to see it, but just say, I'm going to vote the way I think I need to vote, or I don't belong to be here. And, we got so many national examples of people who don't vote their conscience any longer. And, hopefully at the local level, you can still do that. And try not to mistake those 10 or 20 people for the residents of Cupertino, or even for your voters.
Which is okay, but I think we can expect the public, there will be people who always attack us, which is fine, fact of life. What matters is that this distrust among the governance team and commissioners. So if there is like tools, a lot of times public comment is they want us to punish each other, punish the commissioners. That's where it really breaks that trust. If any one of us misstep or commissioner misstep, what we should work on is, okay, figure out how do we help each other to improve, right? Rather than, oh, you did wrong, that punish you. So
Yeah, I mean, you all need to hold each other to certain standards in regard to how you treat each other, how you treat commissioners. Commissioners need to be held to certain standards on how they treat each other, how they treat the staff. You need to have expectations of the staff. But, everybody needs to be held accountable, but you don't do it in a way where I'm just itching to find someone slip up so I can attack them.
Well, that's where we were before. I think we're a little bit better now. I mean, I'll leave you that. I mean, I'm the victim of some of these things. So I don't take it personal because they're playing campaign games, right? They're trying to eliminate a candidate from running. They're trying to eliminate me from running. So that's part of the game. But that's, but it shouldn't be that way. It makes it harder for other people to want to run, and it makes it harder to get good community members to run. So, I mean, and that's really where we are. We're almost in a position where we have certain individuals right now, from what I'm hearing, that want to punish an individual before they can even run. And it's like flipping the script on the other end. So you can't have that both ways, right? So I agree with you. I mean, there's some principles here, but I think the focus here was really about getting trust among the five of us, so that we can actually function as a team. It's not that we don't have trust. It's just we haven't had the opportunities to develop trust. And you build trust by working through projects. So.
And I'm not going to oversimplify things, but you can be under a lot of pressures, and whether it relates to people in the community or issues or whatever. But the five of you can control your own fate, and you can create a positive or negative environment for your staff, and create a positive or negative environment for commissioners. But you want to be, but like with all these relations, you want to be both supportive, but also hold people accountable for reasonable behavior. Not nail them every time they make a misstep or make a mistake. But, if you have some people who don't uphold your values and consistently violate your values, whether commissioners or yourself or staff or anybody else, then you need to figure out how to deal with that. But, sometimes it's easy to get into attack mode before maybe you really understand what may have happened and that sort of thing. So, all right, we need to talk about, again, probably appropriate side is resilience. You do need to be resilient. Well, I tell you, I've worked with council members who didn't like being criticized, and I had to hold back by saying, why did you run for city council? I mean, if you don't like being criticized, it's not a good thing to do because,
Wrong job.
Yeah, if it's not just parades and ribbon cuttings, you're actually there to make some really hard decisions that people aren't going to like. So easier said than done, but whatever you can do to be resilient. And again, only one more slide, then I'm going to ask you a question. Key indicator of organizational dysfunction: how much time, money, and focus are devoted inside City Hall issue?
I want to disagree on that statement.
Okay.
When your fundamentals and foundation are not there, you have to fix that first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been doing for the last 2 years, 3 years. We're trying to fix the fundamental issues that are broken. So when you got a system that has been neglected, that has not had checks and balances in place, that has not had sunshine in place, you have to fix that first. That's your foundation. So if you find the city council fixing a lot of inside city council issues, it's not because they want to do that. People would rather spend time on quality of life. People would rather spend time on the issues that grab attention. But there's a lot of hard work that's being done internally to fix those issues. To me, that is a false statement.
Couldn't disagree more. Now, let me make a distinction. The distinction I'm making is, like this workshop today, you're talking about fixing things, how to get things better, that's a good thing. If you're having unnecessary disputes and they are continuing and they're not leading to any positive improvements, they're not leading to any positive outcome, then I think that's, that's unnecessary dishonest.
But it was a lack of trust from one side versus the other to say that there were issues internally until they were exposed that we're finally able to actually address those issues. Right. And it's because those issues were exposed, we were finally able to get to those issues because we were always told, oh, just trust the city staff. They know exactly what they're doing. When certain things were broken, we had to go back in and find those. So that you can't, that's why I'm saying I'm reacting to that statement because you have to certainly fix those. Now, if we had trust among the five of us, we would have gotten to these issues earlier. And that's what I would love to get to is to get to that level of trust to say, here's why we're going after this issue, because we see something's broken.
But is it an obligation to get out of that cycle sooner or later, whether you do that?
Oh, yeah, because then you don't impact the public if you're stuck here. I don't disagree. So.
Is there a hand I saw out of the corner of my eye? Oh, okay.
I was just telling you that.
Check.
All right, so here's a question for you. I wanted to spend the rest of the time, and I have another 20 minutes, talking about these questions, talking about mutual expectations. I also know there may be other things you want to talk about that you think are important to talk about in regard to improving the relationship. So one of the questions I have for you is, if you take 5 minutes and think about those three questions and talk about mutual expectations, will that result in a conversation that you think will, we're not solving everything, in an hour and a half on a Saturday morning. We're trying to move the ball forward a little bit. Do you see this as a helpful way to begin to talk about where you want to go by making sure there's some alignment in regard to your mutual expectations among yourselves and also between you and the staff?
I think we have a better relationship with staff than we ever had in the past. But I don't know, other people feel that way, right? But I think we've got what we have right now on our staff is a lot more responsiveness to council member concerns, a lot more openness, a lot more transparency. I think the bottom two I'm less worried about. I'm actually worried about the first question, right?
All right, would you do this? Would you take 5 minutes and look at those three questions and jot down your reaction to each of those questions? Then we're going to put them up on some chart paper. So what do you expect from each other? So and I'm not talking about status quo. I'm talking about the ideal. In an ideal circumstance, what could you expect from each other? Second question is, again, in an ideal environment, what do you need from the city manager and staff for you to do your job well? And then thirdly, in an ideal environment, what does the manager and staff need from you individually and as a council to be successful in their roles? Are those three clear? Let's just take 5 minutes and do that. And then we're going to take a look at those, see how much alignment there is. I actually asked your staff to answer the second two, and we'll go through those as well.
Someone's fun. Tina's fun. Tina's fun.
All right. We okay to get started? All right. Kirsten, thank you for your help with this. I'm really good with doing charts except for my handwriting and my spelling. So Kirsten's gonna help with this. So, in a perfect world, what would your expectations of each other be? Who wants to start?
I would love that my fellow council members be accessible to the public to be able to schedule a meeting or have a conversation.
Public for meetings.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to meet with them, whether they like it or not. I mean, they should be able to approach them and schedule a meeting.
We'll get back to talk about these in a minute, but we did it right now. Accessible to public for meetings.
Honest dialogue about an issue. I don't mind agreeing to disagree, but I want honest dialogue.
Honest dialogue. Okay,
Right.
honest dialogue.
Maybe ability to listen to each other and appreciate a contrary position.
Okay. Ability to listen and appreciate contrary positions.
I put my next.
Sure.
Be supportive and avoid political attacks. Direct your attention to the agenda matters.
Be supportive. Avoid political attacks. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yeah, avoid political attacks. Direct attention to the agenda matters. Political attack. That's attacks. Sorry. And I would say,
Or is that the agenda? I think agenda matters, not political matters.
yeah, since I'm chair this year, also try to be supportive of the chair and the issue of running the meeting and staying on time and all. And, sticking to the agenda matters.
Okay. What else?
I'll build on that one a little bit, respecting the fact that a council meeting is there for the conduct of the people's business.
Okay.
I didn't catch that one.
Yes.
Conduct of the people's business.
Yeah. Respect that meetings are for the conduct of.
Yeah, so it aligns with the notion of directing commentary at the matter at hand. It's not supposed to be about grandstanding. It's supposed to be at a point in time where you are trying to get to a decision on an item that is in front of us rather than talking off topic or around topics.
Okay.
I'm not sure we captured quite that.
Agenda topics.
Agenda topics. Focus on agenda topics. Yeah, focus on agenda topics would be an addition.
I hear what you're saying about grandstanding. I'm sensitive to that.
So for me, I think the respect for each other
Mutual respect.
and respect for differences in priorities, working styles.
Use the prep session times and try to get questions in the extra time that we have before the meeting happens, so that we don't have them drawn out.
In advance, huh?
Drawn out, yeah. Those, I thought that they've been really helpful, having the prep sessions and staff available to walk us through before we get to the agenda item, and then you can then go back and ask more. So you get kind of an introduction, and then you can, it helps to keep the meeting on track, and we've got some really packed meetings coming.
Yeah, I think an efficiently run meeting um, has a lot going for it, and sometimes, often, the grandstanding uh, and just the ability to not be concise or stay on the topic sort of comes in the way of running an efficient meeting.
Some kind of support efficient meeting.
Pardon me?
Support efficient meetings, so that's the way.
Support efficient meetings. Yes, and recognize that an efficient meeting is not necessarily contrary to, or it's not the same as muzzling the public or muzzling comments. You can still get all the information you want, and
You can be
speak
efficient and
say
thorough at the same
efficient,
time.
which I think is more effective than sort of.
I would respectfully challenge that. I would say the public shows up once in a while to have a conversation when they finally wake up on an issue that impacts them. And they don't necessarily come into the meeting knowing that, we want to run an efficient meeting. It's contrary to their ability to express themselves and share their point of view. And when they're there, they want to be heard. And I mean, our job is to represent them. Our job is to listen to them. And if they're not efficient and if they're not saying it in the exact same way, that's their right. I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to support them.
So I'm not talking about the public, because we do have a
You're talking about each other.
time limit for the
You're
public.
talking about each other. Okay.
Anything else as far as mutual expectations?
A reminder that we do operate under the council manager form of government, and sometimes the city manager is going to have to say no because council gives direction and notice to the public.
I think there's a lot we could talk about on the list, and there's only so much, very limited time we have right now. But let's get the other lists up there since you worked on them. So what does thank you for those comments. What do you need from the city manager and staff for you to get your jobs done? So that'll be that question.
Want to start on that side first? Just regard the orders.
I think anybody's got anything to offer.
Oh,
So,
just-
yeah.
Information. We need information from the manager and staff, and no surprises.
No surprise information,
And
no surprises,
and respect. So
respect.
We have a lot of these now, but it just in general, I'd say like accountability is important, right? Accountability of like staff. When staff says they're going to do something, they do something. I mean, I think that's key. I mean, we have that now, but just in general.
Right, now that we're talking the ideal.
Ideal, yeah.
So even if it's already occurring, it's good to put it down there.
Yeah.
Accountability.
I mean, information is tough. Like, we never have enough information and context, but the more we have access to it, self-service, to be able to find it, I think the more we can do our research and get there. But I mean, we have that right now.
And everybody has different levels of information.
And levels of detail. Some people have different levels of detail.
What else do you need from the staff?
Responsiveness to the public.
Yeah, responsiveness to the
What they
public.
are, what the public see.
Mhm.
And I think treating all members of the public equally, because I feel that's hard. Some people have more access than others. Because of their historical relationship.
Right.
I
Equal treatment of the public and also respectful.
I would parse that a little bit different, and I know some of my colleagues may disagree, but I would say a prioritization of residents versus outside interests is important in terms of how time is allocated. We've had so much staff time being consumed by outside interests and not residents over the past few years, that outside interests have had a much undue influence on our staff policy and staff direction. So simple examples like we should have prioritization for our residents in our resident services over non-residents. And I think that's a very important thing for me.
And ultimately, the council needs to establish, at least in broad terms, what the priorities are.
Right. I mean, we've had so many outside interests consume staff time on their priorities as opposed to resident priorities. That distinction to me is very important.
And just to
Oh. So I think for the two comment I have, I think the first one is just responsiveness to the public, not equally. The equally is the second part, which you already have. But the first part is just responsiveness. Second part is response equally, right? I guess equal access to the staff. And the second is more about equal access.
so
And
your
I think Councilmember Wang's point wasn't written there.
So your question was, what does the council need from the city manager and staff? And I think just a clear understanding of what the role of a city manager and staff. And sometimes we forget that we want the city manager, and the city manager works for us. So putting her or him, in this case, her, in an awkward position by giving us everything that we ask for. And the reason I say this was I was on the staff for many years, and I know how difficult it is to run an organization which is staffed by experts. And sometimes we come off as saying we are the experts, and we're not. We are 5 different people who got elected for whatever issues that seemed important at that time. But I don't pretend to be a civil engineer. I don't pretend to be an accountant. And I think that lack of trust, and it goes back to your previous slide, where we spend a lot of, maybe not all the time, but we have spent a lot of time directing the city manager and her staff to do things a certain way, when my position would be they're the experts. They went to school, they went to graduate school for finance or engineering or accounting, and we cannot sort of sit on a high horse and say, this is what I say. And now with AI and all that, it's become even more complicated.
There probably is even.
I know, I'm sorry.
For the third question, which is,
Trust the staff.
well, basically, give staff flexibility to carry out council direction.
Okay.
Which would be the next, Kirsten would be the third question relating, which is staff needs from the council. Yes, Councilman Wong.
I want to add to your statement here. And you and I've had this conversation in the past. Trust the staff. If you have competent staff, what happens when you don't and you have to do a check-in on that? Right? If you've witnessed over the last 2 years what has been uncovered and what we've had to do, would you still say?
I disagree. So we'll have to talk about that.
Then we'll agree to disagree.
So regarding that, I kind of disagree in the point that, yes, staff is the expert, but for a lot of the issues, experts even disagree on how this could be handled. So which is why we do need the council to give direction. So I would trust the staff to follow council direction. I wouldn't trust just an expert because I often can find an expert that can argue the other way.
Their job is to give you their best professional opinion.
Yeah,
Your
they're
job is to
trained.
decide what to do with it, and their job is to carry out whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, they are trained professionally to implement direction, not to make decision for us. So there's a distinction.
Look, we're in an era where expertise is a commodity, but experience is not. We are trusting on the experience of the city managers and staff to do something. But when we have an issue that gets uncovered because it has to be corrected or it needs to be corrected, the city council manager form of government actually hinders everything and goes against almost everything that was designed to protect it against, which is really the corruption of a number of sitting political class. And so what we end up is the same problem when we have with term limits is that the city staff becomes super powerful and can get corrupted with no checks and balance. And that's what's been happening in most of California cities. And we're seeing that right now where city managers with undue influence have corrupted their institutions. We've had to fix this over the last 2 years. And that's the bold statement I'm going to make on it. And so this is where our disagreement is, trust the staff, but the staff went down a path so far that it had to be fixed.
Yeah.
That was our issue here, which is why
that-
we're here on council
That's
at this
why I
moment.
mentioned the respect.
So-
It's respect from staff, because it's very easy to staff to think, I'm the expert, I was trained in this, I know everything. You council members are silly, you don't have the background. It's very easy.
I mean, it needs to
staff
be mutual
fall into
respect,
that
right?
trap.
Right.
So we need staff to respect that we are the decision maker, and they make advice recommendation to us. We may agree, but when we disagree, doesn't mean we are idiot. We disagree because we have other priorities.
I've just written an article saying city councils have the right to make their own decisions.
Yeah,
You do.
and a lot of times
And boneheaded ones
experts
too,
do
but yes.
disagree, and then
And really boneheaded
because
ones.
they value different things. So we need the staff to respect the council, may or may not, may
It
or
needs to
may
be
not,
mutual respect, right? And there need to be
I guess.
clarity about role and responsibilities, and mutual respect, and everybody have the ability to carry out those roles in an appropriate way.
I do recognize staff want, very much for their recommendations to be accepted, and, but.
Human nature, but they get over that they want to.
Disagree doesn't mean we don't respect their
Exactly,
expertise.
and everybody has to
We-
understand that.
And we need the staff to understand that also.
I think that second point is very important.
By that same token, though, how it's presented on the day, it does impact morale. So
Oh, yeah.
the way that it is presented, in my view, should not be presented as, you did terrible, you messed this all up, you. That's a really good way of having no city staff or having no competence.
I mean, I think it's intellectually lazy when you attack the person rather than the idea or the recommendation. You can disagree with the idea or the recommendation. You don't have to attack the person who's making it or delivering it, who may or may not have even made the final decision.
But I don't think anyone, ever since I've been on the council, has ever done.
I've seen it lots of
Oh, yeah.
times.
I mean,
Privately.
I have the confidence to disagree with the idea or the recommendation. I mean, you're the bosses. It's like bullying if you attack subordinates in public, it's not a good look.
Yeah. I'm doing these deliberate just to understand people. So Councilmember Froen, JR. So how would you make that point in public to find the balance between accountability and the need to address a corrective action?
You don't make that in public.
You would never make that in public.
Staff they are within the chain of command of the city manager. You take that matter up with the city manager. You don't sit there and embarrass every single person who is sitting there trying to serve the city and do work. It's a really good way, like I said, of having no city staff.
Do you think sometimes it's done so that we don't have those individuals there?
That's not a good way to achieve that.
Exactly.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that may be the reason.
Well, I assume that may well be, and I
Yeah.
think it's.
Here's my challenge. Use up my time. We didn't even get the third list. Can we take 5 more minutes to do the third list and then we'll stop? But
The time is just a construct. I think this dialogue is a lot more important. I'm just being respectful. This conversation right now that I have with JR is probably more important to me, and in terms of understanding how JR thinks and the insightfulness, because I would never understood that's his values, right? So to me, that is a lot more valuable than going through a process on a schedule and time to get to your questions. That's all I'm saying. That's my opinion, but
it's your meeting.
I could be outvoted because I wasn't persuasive enough.
Again, the second part is to deal with your strategic planning effort. I know you're having a rich discussion.
Well, we can skip recess.
Yeah, so I was,
That's up to the chair.
We can. Do we agree to skip recess? You want to get to item 3? Okay.
No, but I
I'll
want
give
this
you
conversation.
Line, respect for, by the way, I did have some here, so responsiveness to the public. Mine was responsiveness to information requests, and to trust that finding problems is with the intent to improve. And that really points to one of the smart things the 2019 council did was to hire the internal controls auditor and have the risk assessment, Baker Tilly. And what that did was pull council away from being in the position where we would say, we think this and this needs to be improved. And it put a professional body in there who would then communicate with staff. And I think that's gotten rid of a lot of the kind of messy interrelationships because we're doing this in a more structured, professional manner. So
I'd really strongly agree with that point. I think it
Mayor,
also.
really trust the process.
Trust that finding problems is with the intent to improve. It's just put TQM. TQM. That's all. Total. Yeah.
It's to find improvement, not to find blame, not to assign.
Exactly. Yeah, because I believe we all want the good for the city. We all want the city to be running well, and we all know that we're going to be terming out. We want to make sure that we left good processes in place and that we don't feel like we ever need to run again. That's fine. My thought.
Right, and the good thing about that was it was an outside entity which sort of looked at the city operations from a high level perspective.
So you appreciated the objectiveness of that?
I did.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like you appreciate the objectiveness and the outside expertise.
It's
In that-
It's
in
not
that
just
because
responsiveness to
there
the
were
public,
issues.
but it's
Yeah.
for
So
information.
one more item,
Yeah,
no, under more, there is one more item.
yeah, information requests from us. Yeah,
Under more, no, under more, there
The
was
last
one more
one.
item.
put one more for Dr. Mayor.
responsiveness to info requests. And then I can start the third, the staff needs from council, respect for their time commitments, their effort, and respect for them as individuals.
So this is the third question.
Yeah.
Which I was
Okay,
thinking that we
yeah,
get
if
from
we
them.
could just,
Get from them, yeah, well, not
if
from
we could
us.
just finish, just finish on the third question, at least that'd be a logical break point for us. So Krista will go over to, so,
Did you hear what the mayor said?
yeah,
For the
oh,
third,
go
for the
over,
third.
go over to the next one.
That was
That
for
one,
the
yeah.
third.
Respect for time commitments, effort, and respect for them as individuals. And part of that respect as individuals plays into what Councilmember Fruin was saying.
Time commitment.
That we're not going to single out staff during a meeting and use that as a time to create an inappropriate reprimand of some sort, that we have an issue, we take it up with the city manager, and show our respect for these individuals. Just as we don't like to be attacked while we're sitting on the dais, staff isn't going to want that either.
Okay, what else does the staff need from
So
all of you?
for me, I also wrote respect for their expertise and time. And
Respect for expertise and time.
I think we should hear from them.
I think we should hear from the staff on the third question, not from us.
Well,
It doesn't make any sense. You guys should go up and put stuff up.
We already have that. The next few slides, if you want to see it.
Oh, okay, you got it? All right, perfect. All right,
no,
that's
no
fine.
surprises. No.
Not for us to say.
So I do try to send in my questions ahead of time. even if I didn't ask it before, and the appreciation for their efforts. I think we need to show more appreciation.
If I can add to that one, I think, in the spirit of sending in questions ahead of time, sending them early enough that a response is feasible in advance of the meeting. I think it's probably not always going to be reasonable to expect that if you have questions on the day of, there's going to be an answer. From my perspective, I think that staff likely needs a willingness from council to hear the word no when it comes to requests that either are contrary to something that council has actually given direction on, or that would take too much time and would require this direction. That goes to the heart of how the system of government works. People don't like the system of government, and always adopt the city charter and change it. That's a different process. California allows for it, but this is what we've got set up, and I think that it is disrespectful amongst us to do it right around an actual council meeting.
I would add to the statement here, but I think that's vestiges when we couldn't get information from city staff, which is why those certain techniques were applied to get to that information. And so what, I mean, it's not for now, but I would love to ask you at a later point in time as a placeholder, what do you do when you have a city manager and a city staff that's not giving you the answers and is stonewalling you? Because that's what we had in the past.
Well, Councilmember Wong, you and I need to have lunch to talk about the council manager form of government in general.
I get it. No, I get the form of government. I get the form of government. But I'm just saying that's if you're trying, that's really what you're hearing. That's your context.
I've overstayed my welcome, but you want to see the staff answers?
Yes.
Now, the staff answers, you know what's made clear? It's not a description of the current situation. It's a description of the ideal.
Yes.
And they didn't answer the first question. I left that one just for you folks. But this is how they responded to those questions. What does the council need from the staff? Complete and accurate information regarding all issues and projects. Clear and timely information, no surprises. Let me know if you disagree with any of these. Recommendations based on best professional judgment with options. Complete policy analysis, including implications of decisions. Projects, policies, in alignment with the council's strategic goals and priorities. Accurate and timely information regarding city operations, accurate and timely legal support and communication, city protocols and procedures to guide decision-making and communication, transparency, reliable records, clear and timely agendas and minutes. Conduct city business in a neutral, nonpartisan manner, provide honest and independent professional advice, willingness to be frank with the council regarding the feasibility, legality, and appropriateness of a proposal. Any objections to that? But that's what they think they owe you, okay? Pretty good list, I think. This is what they need from you. Clear direction. They don't have clear direction, they can't carry it out. Realistic prioritization and recognition of resource limitations. Again, this is not a critique of the current situation. This is under ideal circumstances. What do staffs need from council? Respect the staff's best professional judgment, whether or not you choose to follow it. Have unified goals and strategic alignment. Have constructive feedback and evaluation, and trust. Professional working relationships and environment, respecting the differences between policy making and implementation. Adequate resources to meet council and community expectations. Foster trust and collaboration. Ensure adequate legal resources, support established procedures and policies. Channel communication through the city manager, refer constituents to staff, re-operational issues. Stick to prioritize city work program, provide questions, re-agenda items as early as possible, try to keep the whole community in mind when making decisions, be responsive when staff needs feedback regarding scheduled meetings, etc. And the last group, respect the legal and procedural requirements, support realistic workloads and resources. There's some overlap. Support policy, procedure manuals, documents, and promote adherence. Separate the messenger from the message. Some of the things we talked about. We could go have a rich discussion probably about all of these, which we don't have time for today. If you want to see the things that I'm really impressed with, I've answered all three of those questions in minute detail, and which I will not go through. But I take it this may not be the last conversation you have about this, but if this has begun a dialogue on some of the things you need to have a dialogue regarding, that's great, but I've already overstayed my welcome, but I appreciate your patience with that and look forward to any other comments or thoughts you may have going forward.
Left a little hours over.
Mayor, just in closing of this, in this item, this was a really good discussion. I appreciate all of you participating. And if council, as all of you together want the city manager to consider bringing him back for a conversation sometime in the future, absolutely good to go.
I would like that. Do we need to decide now?
If there's consensus now, I can be working with Kevin and schedule a part
Okay
two.
with that. Yeah, I feel like we've started to speak.
Yeah, I think we are in a good place.
So we have two, Jay, what is fine.
It's fine. I don't have an objection.
Okay, so we have a thin majority.
And I can, if there's something, if we do have majority for part two, I would love to, I'll talk to all of them and see what part two have. But I felt like we kind of cut it off. So.
I think it's maybe during the heat of the fall, that if that would be possible, it might help provide us. Yeah. Once we get
I
into
think it would be helpful before the heat of the fall. It's
in
gonna be.
September,
Yeah,
early
it's
September.
campaign season for 2 out of 5 of us.
early September. We're on
Yeah, right
recess
after our office recess.
right after. Yeah.
But if we do structure it, please take a scenario-based approach and a case-based approach to go through it, because the theoretical aspects are great, but it doesn't, until you get to detail, like, for example, I was flowing one right now, which is, don't like direct attacks on staff, great, but inability to achieve accountability with a city manager that can't respond, how would you handle it? Boom, now you have a very interesting conversation. All your values and everything comes out of that case study. You can run the scenario, and it's a lot more interesting because that's something that would impact it. We don't have that situation today, but in the event that we had that situation in the future, how would you handle that? And then that helps everybody understands how you would interact. So that's, I prefer a more case approach, more interactive approach.
Oh, hands up.
Kevin?
Thank you.
So, sorry, Mayor.
Are we going to be having a little short?
I think if we want to take a 3 to 5 minute break, we're okay.
Okay,
Like a bio break.
3 to 5.
It'd be great. Here, I'll watch you.
Are you okay?
If we can try to.
You do have a camera running.
Yes.
Come on.
I'm gonna see.
But we're sharing.
Oh, it's that, one.
Okay.
There we're ready.
All right, so council is reconvened for our special meeting. We're moving on to the strategic planning portion. Madam City Manager, will you please begin the presentation?
Thank you, Mayor. So this portion of the retreat is reserved for a discussion on the strategic plan. So the strategic plan for the city is an important component of governance. Good governance. Been talking about that for a while. And it's a high level plan that will get council and staff organized in a good informed fashion that provides some clarity and clear expectations in terms of how the city functions. A lot of the important aspects of the city functions, such as the budget, the CIP, the city work program, all of these together, how they interact, function, is the broader strategic plan. So we're going to dive into it in a little bit. And to present the proposed strategic plan, we have Drew Corbett here. He's going to run through a series of slides, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And with that, I will hand over to Drew.
Great, thanks, Tina. Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Drew Gobit. I'm an independent consultant, former city manager, former finance director. As Tina mentioned, we're here to talk about predominantly the strategic planning process going forward. So getting right into it.
Thinking.
Just getting that set up. Go ahead and continue. So before we sort of move forward for today, I want to step back just a bit to talk about where we got to last year. So last year, in March 2025, you had a workshop where the intention was to set the city priorities for the next 2 years. So the current year, fiscal year 25-26, and next year, 26-27. At that time, there was unanimous adoption of a strategic vision framework. And the idea of that was to then guide decision-making and long-term planning for the city. And within that framework, we laid out 6 council goals and 3 focus areas with the intention to review those council goals and focus areas every 2 years and either reaffirm them or adjust them in that 2-year time frame. And these goals and focus areas created the framework for your 2-year city work program. So last year you accomplished a lot. You created a really good process for strategic planning. And what we're hoping to accomplish today then is to set some specific timeframes and some specific deliverables for that 2-year period, given that we're about halfway through. So next slide, please. So just again, stepping back, your current strategic vision as set forward last year was the 6 council goals that we talked about. You have public engagement and transparency, transportation, housing, quality of life, environmental sustainability, and fiscal strategy. And then within those council goals, you have 3 focus areas: fiscal resilience, small business revitalization, and emergency management. And from that framework came the 2-year city work program, which you're in process with right now, that began the beginning of the fiscal year in July of 2025. Next slide, please. So as Tina mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a number of things related to your strategic plan and your city work program. Primarily, as it relates to finances, are your operating budget and your 5-year CIP. Because all of those things, the city work program, your operating budget, and your CIP have to compete for your limited resources. There needs to be some degree of alignment between those three things. And so with briefly a status-related update on some of your related initiatives, you did bring the city work grant program in December for review, and there were some modest updates made to that then. Next Tuesday, you have your mid-year operating budget update, and you have an update on your 5-year CIP. And then, as an ongoing effort, the 26-27 operating budget and the next version of the 5-year CIP are currently underway in terms of being developed and will be delivered later this spring. So you have a really good framework in place. What you created last year in March would put forward a really good 2-year framework for strategic planning. So what we're hoping to accomplish today is really just elevate that process a little bit and set up basically a maintenance structure to allow that 2-year planning process to have some of those specific deliverables over the course of the 2-year periods to set some expectation, right? And that's one of the top things we want to do is establish a consistent process and timeline that will allow this to move forward on an every other year basis consistently. That will create some set expectations for both council and staff and the community in terms of what they can expect. The big thing it's going to do is it's going to align resources across the city work program, the operating budget, and the CIP. When I start going into some of the proposed process and some of the timelines and deliverables, you'll see we're trying to align those things so that, number one, that resources are being allocated appropriately and not being sort of double counted amongst the city work program, the operating budget, and the 5-year CIP, and also that those resources aren't being overcommitted, right? The city is able to stay within its means for all the things that we want to do. And with the ultimate goal of this being really to prioritize resources on and prioritize staff time, on project delivery and on operational delivery, right? Providing service less time out, trying to administer a process, trying to create some efficiencies there. And within that, so you'll see over the next couple of slides, next please. Over the next 3 slides, this one will be some specific timeframes for deliverables of the strategic plan. And the purpose of this is to really maintain that framework that you created and established back in 2025. Again, I think you have a really strong framework in place. You have the goals, you have your focus areas, you have your 2-year work plan. We're not suggesting to get rid of any of that. I think it's a really good process. So what we want to do is maintain it and create some additional structure for it. So the idea would be to continue with the goals and the focused areas being reaffirmed or revised and ultimately reviewed thoroughly every other year. Have the 2-year work program developed in conjunction with that, and then also developed in conjunction with the operating budget and the 5-year CIP. Again, there's only one set of resources that you have, and you have to allocate them across 3 things: your 5-year CIP, your operating budget, and your city work program. And the idea here is to ensure some process continuity across election cycles, but also understanding that there will be some changes, right? And it's not going to preclude any adjustments. We're not suggesting that this is a 2-year process. You can't touch it in the intervening period. We're going to have some specific timeframes and milestones in there where there will be opportunities to adjust. But I think having some structure to it will help avoid, adjustments on an ongoing basis that creates some administrative inefficiency and take away from service delivery. Right, so moving on to the next slide, I'm going to start with the timeframe. And the first slide is really starting at the beginning of the next fiscal year, the 26-27 fiscal year. So before that time, the focus is going to predominantly going to be on creating the operating budget for 26-27 and creating the next version of the 5-year CIP. In July of 2026, you're actually starting year 2 of your city work program. So in July, it would be to begin the year 2 initiatives from the existing city work program. And then in the September, October timeframe, staff would come back with a mid-cycle update on the prior year's city work program. So like it's kind of a closeout of year 1. And I do want to note here, these dates are generally the general timeframe, right? It's not necessarily going to be an exact, some things operationally or per council direction may need to adjust somewhat, but these should be just considered general timeframes. Now, as you move into November, December of 2026, this is when the strategic planning process really begins in earnest after the election. And the idea here, and the reason why we set it up in this manner was to provide an opportunity as you have an election, as you have some potential turnover in council, for council members to start to be able to articulate their priorities and their initiatives to allow for work to begin on those sooner rather than later. So in that November and December of 2026 timeframe after the election, staff would start to query council members on what their priority initiatives were for the next strategic planning process. And then in December of 2026, you'd have your annual new mayor and council orientation session. So moving on to the next slide. As you move into January 2027, so just after the next election, staff is going to start to take that information that they've received from council, start hearing about the priorities and initiatives that the council members are interested in, and they're going to start consolidating those and start to get an idea about what kind of resources would be needed in order to execute those initiatives in preparation of the strategic planning workshop. Also in February, in the February-March timeframe, so either likely the second meeting in February or the first meeting in March, you'd have 3 really key things coming forward. The 5-year CIP, the mid-year operating budget update, and a comprehensive update of what's going on with the existing work. And the idea there is to really set the stage for later in March, having your biannual council priority setting workshop. So you're getting an idea in late February or early March about basically, financial capacity, right? Getting an idea about what the operating budget situation is, how things are looking with the 5-year CIP, and what the update is on the existing work program. That really sets sort of the context for then your biannual council priority setting workshop. From there, staff would begin to consolidate things that receive majority approval for the city work program, for the next city work program, operating budget, the 5-year CIP, start to develop the final work program, the operating budget, and the 5-year CIP. One thing that we're looking to insert in here in the process is in April, a very high-level look and high-level introduction to the budget. I want to be clear here, the idea here is not to take a deep dive into the operating budget. It's still being developed. The idea here is in April to take a high level, for council to take a high level look at what the budget's looking like for the following year. Some of the major increases in the budgets, the major adds, what the work plan is doing to the budget, so that staff can get final direction from council to finish up the development of the proposed budget. And ideally, when that proposed budget is released in May, there are a few changes to it because council's had to look at what the major changes are before it gets finalized. Yes, and that would be next April. This is, thank you for that clarification. So this all is starting in next fiscal year. We're trying to put the framework in place to get this done. So in May of 2027 would be the delivery of the budget, the operating budget, the delivery of the 5-year CIP, and the finalization of the city work program. And then in June of 27, as usual, you would have your public hearing and your adoption of the budget documents. Next slide. So then I'll quickly move through the last timeline slide here. This is what 27, 28 looks like, and it looks pretty similar to 27 with one key difference. You'll see in March, there is no strategic planning because you're in the middle of the strategic planning cycle. But you do have some of those major updates, including in February, March, where you have an update of where things are with the existing city work program. You have the mid-year, the standard mid-year update, and you have a review of the 5-year CIP. So those are good checkpoints on where things stand mid-cycle. You're also just moving backwards a little bit. In September or October, you also have a review of the closeout of the last cycle's city work program. So it's another opportunity to see the work program and as conditions have changed, make adjustments as needed. So next slide. So with that really concludes the core of the presentation. We did want to ask council a few questions to get some feedback. And question one is, you adopted this framework last year, the 2-year framework, and I think it's a very solid framework. Otherwise, we would have proposed major changes to it, but we're not. I think ultimately it's a good framework. And again, we're trying to put some milestones and deliverables on that plan. The big question is do you still agree with that framework? Do you want to retain that core 2-year framework where you have your strategic vision, a plan, your council goals, your focus areas, and you're really doing a real major look at them every year? The second question is if you want to maintain the core framework, are there any adjustments that you want to make? Like maybe you don't want to overhaul the whole thing, but maybe there's some tweaks on it. And then question number 3 is, do you have feedback to staff on the proposed timeline in support of this framework?
At first, I have a question on the framework. I feel like there's some reason.
Okay.
Should we ask that first? So we are saying, first of all, I think we've been saying 5-year CIP, but then in the past we have been adopting actually 1-year CIP with a 5-year outlook. We've never had a 5-year CIP. By 5-year CIP, what I was seeing in my mind is first year we have this project, second year we start that project, third year, fourth year. So every year there's a new project to start. We've never done it. It's always here is a project we are starting next year. Here is a 5-year outlook for because some of the things are multi. So when then we have budget outlook for it. So what do you mean by 5 years? Are we now adopting?
Question for the attorney on that one. So we will be looking at the CIP and the prioritization matrix. I'm asking because I'm concerned because it's on the agenda. So I don't want us to be pre-deliberating the item. So what can we talk about where we're not actually getting into that item?
So I think I can start answering it if you want me to stop. I think this is mostly a process and clarification question. I don't think we're deliberating on
Items.
specifics of the CIP.
Strategic planning workshop.
Yeah, and we're talking about the 5-year CIP within that framework. So if you want me to stop, I can. Yeah.
Maybe it's your definition of 5 years.
Yeah, so you bring up an important distinction, and I think in the term 5-year CIP is used pretty universally, and it's probably a bit of a misnomer. Most cities do exactly what you just described, which is it is a 5-year plan. There's a heavy focus on the funding the projects that are in year 1. Year 2 through 5 are generally a plan, and then they get adjusted each year as capacity exists, as other projects come up. It's an opportunity to reprioritize every year. In the best case scenario, you get a lot of continuity within the 5-year plan. So things that were in year two prior become your
So
one
my,
item.
that's just my question is, are we changing that practice?
No.
So we're not, we are just doing the 1 year of adoption with the 5-year outlook, right?
Correct.
So then the question is for 2028, I don't see a CIP adoption here. That makes me wonder, how come if we are still doing that, shouldn't we still have a CIP adoption for 2028?
There will still be a CIP. So that.
So there will be just
Yeah,
economic.
yeah. It will
Okay,
be listed as-
Right. and then, so priority setup will be every other year. Because we are doing 2-year work program. Right, yeah,
Correct.
okay,
That's the intent.
okay, then for the second year, I think usually like we have done, even if it's a 2-year program, we sometimes do find the need that we need to revise. So for the 2027, 2028, I was expecting to see, even though we are not adopting a new work program, but often we do have some religion addition in the past also. So there is still a kind of a work program adoption process, a religion process.
So,
That's not listed here, but that's still happening.
so there would be, there's two ways to handle that. I think the way that's been anticipated in this particular proposal would be there is going to be a September and October sort of closeout of the prior year's city work program, which will provide an opportunity to provide feedback and council to make any adjustments to the existing work program. And then there will be an update in the February, March timeframe. And then at any other point where council wanted to make adjustments, they could agendize that. The other option, the other way to handle this is based on feedback today. Council could say we want a specific item in the process or a check-in to make adjustments.
Yeah, and if I can add on to Drew, so Vice Mayor, like last year, we brought a mid-year or mid-cycle adjustment in December. It's, sometimes it's going to be up to the mayor to agendize it either in December or January, given the agendas, but usually we do a mid-cycle. But it should be a light adjustment, because we're still in the 2 years.
Actually, I'm not referring to the one that we did in November. So for example, 2023, we adopted 2-year work program, right? But then in 2024, we still had the work program process where I think even staff proposed like 11 projects to the work program. Some of those were from commissions. So there was still kind of an annual work program revision that was being planned. And so are we not doing that? Or do we still have this annual revision?
I think there is an annual revisit, but it shouldn't be an overhaul because we're going back to year 6. So in December, we made some slight tweaks given where the city is. If there's any-
Yeah, but I think there is value to still plan for that, an annual revision.
I agree, but it's just, it's,
That's not planned because the timeline here is just, there is no CIP revision because we have actually been doing annual CIP adoption with the 5-year outlook. And then there's no, from this timeline, annuals, even it's by annual work program, an annual revision check.
we can reword it.
Yeah. So just question about what's in.
Drew, I got a question for you, and to the city manager. I just went through the city work program dashboard and the CIP dashboard that's here. And the question I have is, when you're looking at mid-cycle adjustments, like for example, city work program, we only have 3 items that are completed out of the 30 that we asked for from a status. So how do we factor that into the process? And then the second one is something I discussed with you guys earlier on a prep call, which is really
we probably should have a baseline budget, like essential services, and then another level of like, hey, nice to have, and then a level like, hey, these are luxuries, and that kind of prioritization. It'll make it a lot easier as we try to figure out what projects to cut, what projects to keep, depending what our budget situation looks like. So how do we incorporate some kind of mechanism like that to the methodology?
So I'll start with the first one if I could. So um, that's really what you described, right? So is an ambitious 2-year work program. You get through year one and you've got 3 out of 30 completed. That's sort of really the purpose of that.
This might not be right either. I'm just looking at what's on this dashboard.
Just as an example, right?
Yeah.
You know, let's say you're at 50% after year one,
Yeah.
of the year one. This, I think it goes to the other question as well. The idea of having this September or October check-in is to for exactly that reason, is if staff has an opportunity to say, okay, we had 30 items on our year one work program. We completed 15 of them, they're finished. We've got another 15 that are in various stages of completion. Would you like us, council, to continue to prioritize those, or would you like us to, how would you like us to adjust the year two based on where we are with year one? What's more important? That's really the purpose of that.
I looked at like Mountain View's
Oh, yeah.
list, and they had like 17.
Yeah.
And then Morgan Hill had 54. And we have 30. Personally, I would want us to be a little more realistic about what can actually be accomplished. And after 1 year, we will rescore them and see if some of these we are no longer interested in, hoping that they'll get done. Um, and then we can, remove what's already been completed and then score again. Um, what do you think of that?
Let me add to that a little bit. So there's the work program, and then there's all the other stuff. Like the work program, like this, like small piece out of the overall budget versus all the other operational things that are in there. So the question is, we have a lot of input on this really, really small piece and very little input on the bigger aspect of prioritization. Like, do you want to adjust that in any way?
Well, that when you talk about baseline, that is the baseline budget, and each year, like some of those special projects get rolled into the baseline budget. Um, that gets into a broader discussion about what the operations are of the city. And do you have an example? Because it sort of makes me start thinking about the performance metrics that we have in our budget. And we were having a discussion about that, and some of these performance metrics don't actually show what some of the issues are, perhaps with like complaints about 311 stuff getting closed out
Right,
too
exactly. That's a great one.
Yeah, and the residential remodeling, permitting taking a long time. We don't quite have a full picture of what's causing that. Is it the contractor? Is it the city? Where's the problem existing? Are those the kinds of things that you're thinking about?
I'm on the same alignment as you because I'm like the CWP is like, hey, squirrel. When the real issues are sometimes in the operational part of the budget.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, this is kind of exactly the discussion I'm hoping, right? So there's the process that we're putting in place. And I need everybody to speak back here to make sure what we're missing as we go forward. There's also been, we were discussing, and I wanted to bring it here, is I, as a city manager, I'm kind of thinking about if there could be an operational plan that I could put in place for the organization, which, will directly tie into council's priorities and expectations, kind of building that accountability. But then that's an operational plan where it's not really that council will be able to play too much with it, but hopefully it aligns perfectly with your expectations and priorities. That may clarify expectations also for my staff, right? And through that, I think the tactical piece would be looking at metrics. Are we measuring the right thing? Are we focusing our energy in operational? I mean, there's some operation that we have to make that right, but overall, where we can focus our attention, are we measuring the right thing? I think there's an opportunity for me to take off that more through this process, but not too enmeshed into yours.
Like, for example, like on my end, something on a more strategic level is how will we take advantage of like AI tools to help, with compliance, or AI tools to help you with operational efficiency, or identify cost reduction, or AI tools to help you with scenario budgeting and planning, so that you can actually start getting to some level of situational awareness, like what's happening
Yeah.
in kind of real time. Like it's not going to get there, but at least it can help you with staff hours doing research, or staff hours trying to figure out how to.
Yeah, and that's also a good point there, if I may. When in March of last year, when council was adopting this framework, we talked about there's the broader goals that don't quite get tweaked that often, but there are focus areas that we should be doing more frequently. So if AI is a big focus for us right now, that could become council's focus area. And that gives me, maybe what's really important to council, what should be our focus area, because it is, even operationally, AI is a big chunk of our focus right now. There's so much coming, right? So that's another alignment. If there's the AI is currently council's focus area.
Well, it gives you a tool to put into other things, and not AI on its own.
Yeah. Because these are the types of themes that have come up midway. That's an opportunity for council to change.
Is it too new that there isn't a consultant to go and ask about, I'm the expert on municipal AI usage. Because there's different parts. There's like the simple part, like we've got Copilot now in our Outlook, and we can have Copilot will go out into the internet wilderness and go collect information, like we have the trespass issue. It could give you all the code in there, write you an email and put that in there. And then you've got AI usage for the building plan review, where it can automatically go through the plan set and tell you where it's not compliant. Is there an actual AI expert that is looking at all of these areas for how it can be helpful for the city? I think you probably would.
There won't be one expert because it's in each domain, but people know that AI for city planning, or AI for permitting, or AI for, it's going to come down to that level where you're going to get like experts that are experts in those areas. There's someone that can direct you into all those different areas in municipal government where AI is being applied. You're going to find those, but I think for right now, some of the most useful things you can think about is where you can find, like, let's say you're trying to solve, we have a lot of issues with ticketing and trying to process ticketing requests in 311, right? Someone can run an AI against the ticketing, or some of the providers already have that, tell you where the patterns are, right? Or how to staff appropriately, or adjust your staff allocation.
Okay, so audit added AI into its duties, powers, and functions. I don't know if that's landed on the council's desk. I'm sorry, I can't recall. How are we doing on that?
So that was recommended by the audit committee. There's been some back and forth between the audit committee and council, so that hasn't been officially included as part of its roles and responsibilities in municipal code, but that is in the works.
Is that sitting in the right location though? Because it seems like it could also be work program. And then if we want to add AI into, does that belong? Is that council direction?
We might have a couple of thoughts, but we do have an AI policy. The Terry may be able to confirm with it, if not, we're not going into discussion, but we have the policy currently in place. Yes. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Well, we could take it generically, like we have this idea of something that we might want to add to the work.
So I do, yes, we think like that is the type of thing, where it's like, we think there needs to be a focus on the development and the utilization of AI within the city. And then it rolls over to the city manager to then execute the how.
Yeah, I would say, Mayor, I mean, Terry probably knows more about this as well. She should probably tap into her as to where AI is going for local government. So.
But I'm clearly hearing that's the council's focus right now.
Well, no, I think it's an important focus to think about how we can use it to improve our operations, doing more with less. And I was just, that's my concern. That's at the policy level. So if there's anything we can do there to actually start implementing those things, it might help with budgets and might help with our ability to deliver on services.
So if it becomes a one program item, then council can actually allocate resources and, you're saying it's a priority.
Actually, I was saying something different, but I do agree with you. I think what I was saying is, like, even though it's a work program item, we only completed 3 out of 30, so I'd rather be in the operational side than on the work program side. So, sorry.
If I could address, I actually want to address both comments, because I think they're very related about the volume of work plan items, work program items, and the prioritization. So certainly every city manager would tell you, fewer work program items, the more likely we're going to be able to execute. You don't end up with a set of expectations that can't be realized. That's a challenge, and that's why some cities have 17 and some cities have 54. It's a challenge to get all those things because there's so many things that you want to do. But yes, less is more in terms of execution. In terms of the prioritization issue, one thing that the city could consider is right now you utilize a year one and a year two framework within a 2-year plan. You could, during your next strategic planning, create your list of priorities, create your list and then prioritize them. And say, instead of year one, year two, these are high, these are medium, these are, let's do them as you can. And that would create greater direction and focus for staff. And then during those times, during the September, October update, during the February, March update, when you're getting the here's where we are on the priorities, it's the opportunity to do two things. Number one, sort of reshuffle the priorities. Hey, that was a medium, we now want that to be a high, and potentially add what you need to.
I think structurally the challenge was the separating the work programs from the operational piece. It doesn't give us the bigger picture as to how you want to prioritize, and which is really that's just why we only completed 3 out of the 30, because there are other bigger things that popped up throughout the year that were operationally. And so as as a council, I don't know how we provide you the proper direction as to, do less of this so we can do more of this. And we treat the CWP as like its own little island, but it doesn't get its own little island worth of budget to support the 30, or in terms of resources and budget. It's got the budget, but the resources to implement. And I think that's probably your challenge. That's the gap that we have.
November long in March, this was a struggle, right? We started with 60 or 70, and then we dwindled down to 20, which was a feat in itself.
Yes.
But if you're asking me for my perspective, I think
I am, yes.
I always go, well, I love to start small and overachieve, right? So I think all of us feel good. We have less time to work on, but we're completing them. But I also realize how challenging it is to start from 70, because they're all priority, all 70. So then at least land on 20. That's why we have those check-ins to make sure we're on the sheriff's contract, for example, is taking up time, AI, if it's not council priority, we're spending time on it, right? There's always those things midway.
And I think that's, if I could, I think that's the other thing that we're trying to accomplish with this. And as you notice, there's a lot of alignment, attempted alignment between the operating budget, the work program, and the 5 CIP, because they all take resources. So as those things are being developed together, the resources to execute the work plan have to be considered against operations, have to be considered against the CIP. So it's an opportunity for staff and the administration to tell council, look, if we want to you tell us these are the top 10 work program items to focus on, here's where we're going to have to shuffle the operational level. Right? So it's trying to align those so you're getting those answers earlier rather than later.
Yeah, and then related back to the first part of our conversation today, right? If we had the level of trust here, we could do the horse trading on projects, right? Like, you really want to advocate for this because your constituents want X. I really want this on Y. Let's just cut a deal and then reprioritize and push stuff around so you can get to it. Because everything's important, but nothing's important if you can't get to something, at least complete something. And that's where I think it's really important to be able to do that.
I think that's why the 2-year budget is important, because we go through all this horse trading once every 2 years, and then it's a difficult process, and we all have our priorities. But year one, or the beginning of year one, we come up with our priorities that we've all agreed to, and then during the course of the next 2 years, with staff involvement, we stick to that for the most part, other than making these minor adjustments here and there, and also keeping in mind unexpected things happen. I think 2 years ago there was like a sewer pipe that had to be taken care of. So things happen, and as long as we recognize that the top 10 or whatever that we've decided on, that's our common sort of aspirations, to use your word, and we work towards that. So I'm not that concerned that we only did 3 out of 30 or 3 out of 15. It's not so much that, but making sure we stick to the priorities that we outlined, uh, with the understanding that things change, priorities change, and we have enough checkpoints during the course of the 2 years that we can go back and forth, make changes.
What do we do with these, I would call them work program projects that have just sort of popped up, like the sheriff's contract, legal issues and having to do the closed sessions, truck traffic ended up taking a lot of time. Pickleball, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are kind of like, we don't have any, there's no dashboard that gives us credit for that work. Can that put it under quality of life, or should it get placed onto the work program either?
I wonder if you could give us like a progress report or a performance evaluation every 6 months in terms of what was accomplished.
Operations that
Yeah. Yeah, or everything.
Oh, operation.
Otherwise, like
Get credit.
Or like a
Mayor
quarterly
said,
update or
we
something.
we don't publicize the things that did happen, and then we focus on the 3 things that are on the list.
If I might, within that, is that going to then be directed just functionally? It's something that we would address in a council meeting, or something that would be delivered as an informational item,
Yeah.
et cetera. Like, I just want to make sure that we're not also creating work for ourselves that.
Actually, along the lines of what JR is saying, I would say that you already do that with your city manager newsletters. And maybe it's just rearranging that in a quarterly basis so people can see what progress has occurred. And that might be easier, so you don't have to do a lot of rework. Because you have, it's basically an operational dashboard, what you sent to us.
Yeah.
But I think you can recategorize it.
Because we do a really good job on some of the projects.
Oh, yeah, these are great.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
that's how I know.
No, but not everyone accesses the dashboard.
But yeah, let me follow on that. That's a good idea. I may not have it today, but that's a good idea. And in terms of like how many projects is ideal and what the full program and operation is where it's aligned, I think when we go into the next cycle, when we come back together and we're doing our 2-year book program, I think we can spend time really think about, okay, hey, we started with 80, we're down to 20, and we could say we will definitely commit to 10, and if we get the next 10, that's cherry on top. These are our priorities, but we really absolutely need to do first.
Yeah, it's almost like, I'm gonna use an example in healthcare in Oregon, like they adjust what is covered based on what the budget is, and they move up and down, right? Something like that. So we might have 60 on the list, but the line is at 30 today. It might be at 25 this year because of budgets. It might get adjusted to 40 if we get better budget scenarios. You have that kind of floating variance.
I think we're all kind of grappling with this, right? But we're all on the same page, I get that. And that's why we're trying to put a framework in place, because we don't want to tweak the work program every quarter, because things will come to us. And it's my job to then figure out how that happens, even though it's a new priority, it's not a work program, but what I need to focus on now. But what I don't want to do is have a reprioritization every quarter. That doesn't work. That's why there's this structure in place, and obviously there's no tweaks. Yeah, and we're getting. But I do want to get to the last questions here. Really, we have to mention if council can just kind of high level provide indicate if you're good with this, and then what I'll do is from feedback today, I'll make some tweaks and adjustments and bring it to a future council meeting for formal adoption. That's nice.
I think we're all in agreement. Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
What do you mean by framework?
Right. Yeah, if I can just offer one
Yes.
piece of feedback in along with these questions, the one that I would just encourage you to maybe revisit, is I really like how you tried to bring forward the planning on this to the November timeframe. So that, the things that, especially come out of an election, which help crystallize what people in the broader community care about, can then be translated into the work program rather quickly and without a whole lot of additional retread. The thing that is a little confusing to me, I get the idea of I think why you put it here, but the update, as you've described it, is in September, October. That's mid-cycle because it's relevant to when the budget was adopted, but it doesn't necessarily feel mid-cycle to when we were previously discussing, right? So would there be value to that update being in, say, the March timeframe instead?
Yeah.
Also because I could see this getting infected with a lot of very particular things that are happening at that time, since you're right into the next election.
Yeah, no, good point. And I will say, well, I think you mentioned it. Some of these timelines are just timelines that may be flexible. But we did build in kind of 2 seconds from the program. Sometimes it's incremental, sometimes it's part of the budget, however it's going to work out, but there will at least be one.
Sure. So then I guess my question is to reframe it, what is that? What is the thing in September, October? What does it mean?
The idea there is we've got this 2-year work program, we've got year 1, year 2. The idea is to come in September, October this year, with here's how things went in year 1. Here's the progress that we made. And here's what's left over from year 1 that we didn't get to, and now we've got to add year 2 to it. Does council want to make adjustments given, and you know, Tina and staff has the ability to talk about what resource constraints there are, what things have come up that weren't necessarily expected. So it's just an opportunity to have that check-in for council to maybe reprioritize as needed based on what things have been accomplished.
But it may not be.
Got it.
Be a check.
Okay. Okay.
So by framework, you mean this thing, right?
This was the framework that you adopted, but this
This
is
is
the plan
framework, right?
incorporates this framework, Commissioner.
And then we that framework exactly. And in terms of timeline, I guess timeline, as I mentioned, there is something missing. But I'm assuming we are not adopting this today because it
No.
might be adjusting.
No, I will make
Right.
adjustments.
Oh,
based
so-
on her, we'll bring it back.
The framework that we are adopting is the same as this.
You have already adopted that in March.
Yeah, and you're asking if we have any adjustment for that.
Correct.
If we don't have any adjustment. But in terms, I really like this, that you put this timeline in there that, have. But, yeah, but I mean, it would be nice if we have like different color for budget, for, work program, for CIP, for this kind of
Yeah,
timeline, because then
I-
you'll have good idea of, okay, here's when we propose the new one, here is when we get a mid-year update, and here. And that would be nice to have the different colors.
I think that's fairly simple too.
But I really like the format that we have, so, yeah. So we are supposed to, I like that for work program, you are saying we'll have the mid-year work program update in February and March. So this one, I think we are getting an informal for this week.
We try to do that every quarter.
But the last one, the quarterly report, was just a printout of the dashboard, which doesn't have a lot of information. The people have been asking about some of the work program like this. It's been more than half a year, like a couple, 3. Are we going? Are we on track of completing that? So maybe yeah, there will be more information in your update.
Yes, there will be more information, and I think if you feedback by so maybe it's what's included in there.
Okay, and I think also member for his question about the November, December 2026 query to council member for upcoming priority cycle. I'm guessing this is here because this is a planning for the next 2-year work program.
Yeah,
That's why we query in
November,
November.
December,
Yeah,
beginning of March, where
this is not an annual thing. This is a
this is the beginning.
planning. So maybe the council will change over in December but maybe the current council member can reflect on what has been gone for the last 2 years, for the current 2 year cycle, and then have some input on what could be the upcoming priorities.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And what I was thinking is by December, we usually know who the council members are. We're planning for orientation.
Yeah.
And, so I think we need to wait for that milestone.
Mhm.
Council that actually will be a sitting council. But that's my.
Okay, so that way you will be waiting for the new council member for the 2 years. Yes. Right.
But giving them runway,
Yes.
I think is helpful, because otherwise they're trying to figure that all out very close
Oh,
to
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is conducive to a good
No.
result, so.
Mhm.
It's election cycles are slightly challenging because of the timing of it, but we have a good process in place.
Oh, so maybe it's the query could be because likely the potentially elected council member can already provide input in November, right? So it will be,
Yeah.
is it something that you are envisioning?
If we know who's the incoming council member, but they're not officially a council member.
It's why the timeframes are general timeframes, and so in that circumstance, it's November, December, probably for folks that maybe are remaining on council. You may wait a little longer for new people to make sure that they're oriented. It's a general timeframe, and I think to your point, Councilmember, is, this is in anticipation of getting ready for a March strategic planning meeting, so there's plenty of runway there, so you could.
Yeah, at least 4 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a November timeframe just in general.
If I might suggest, I mean, one of the things that seems to be common across jurisdictions is that when it is sufficiently clear who the new council members would be, that the two direct reports, city managers, city attorney, will frequently reach out, set a coffee, a lunch, whatever, discuss what your priorities are. That's a really good place, it seems to me, to introduce what this process is,
Yeah.
how it works, and what the expectation is of individual council members.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and I'll make sure we do that. We'll also include a couple of slides during the meeting in the orientation, so whoever's, if there are new people coming in, they're aware.
Right. So with that in mind, so likely in December of 2026 is when we will start to talk about the 2 year work program. And then in May of 2027 is when that 2 year work program will be adopted. Right? And then the budget finalized in June when we adopt the budget. And then between January and April, there likely will be multiple meetings when we brainstorm, prioritize this.
Similar to what we did last year.
Yeah, so those are not listed here in the current timeline. So I assume
Yeah,
that you will
Yeah,
insert.
I don't want to have every council
Yeah.
meeting on there.
But I think it's helpful to know what's the timeline process to finalize the work program.
Yeah, and I can drill down into the work program, when we do this.
Because we do have like February, March, April listed here. It would be nice to know. I think March is a little too late to start brainstorming for May. I think our priorities setting workshop used to be in January. In the past city council, it's usually late January when they do priority setup. Because then February, March, that's when you flesh out ideas because the staff need to come back with their estimates of potential things that council want to consider. And then we have, after we get the estimate, then we also prioritize, I think. So if we only start that in March, it's kind of too late.
No, I'm signing because you said we start in January. I think we start with the council meeting in January. I'm starting. So all of those checkpoints are not really, we're not getting really into those state checkpoints. This is high level framework plan. And then, of course, I'll work with all of you as we get closer to say what is the right timeline. That's hard to predict which company, yeah. But there will be, similar process we did last.
Okay.
So we'll probably actually need a retreat early next year to get the new council working together. Okay. So I'm not sure that, I know we mentioned having a check-in in right after the August break ends. We can do that if it's needed, but it seems like we're going to end up really needing one in January or
Yeah,
February.
we were targeting January next year too. We're at the end of February, but I think next year, you're right, something more important to kind of move it up as soon as we, with the body that's going to be working together. So I'll work on that.
Okay, great, great. Well, thank you so much for this report, the strategic planning, and the good governance, council governance session with Kevin Duggan as well. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. See you all March 3rd for a regular city council meeting.